Have you ever looked at your kids and realized your body was there, but your mind was someplace else? Maybe work was still sitting in your chest. Maybe your phone had your attention. Maybe you moved from one task to another practice, dinner, homework, bedtime. Somewhere in the middle of all that, you forgot to actually be there. Not just to provide, not just to drive somewhere, not just show up physically, but really be there. Today's conversation hit me because it's something a lot of dads feel. But don't we always say it out loud? You want to be a good dad, want to be strong, want to handle things. But sometimes we're tired. Sometimes we're not fine. Sometimes we're carrying a lot more than we admit. And sometimes the best thing we can do for our family is finally start paying attention to ourselves too. My guest today is Joe Wheeler. He's a technology attorney, a dad of three, a youth sports coach, and the author of Dad Bod. Focus on you so you can be there for them. And this conversation is not about health. It's about presence, about fatherhood, about moments kids remember, and ones we hope they don't. Stay with me. It's one of the every dads who ever wondered, am I doing enough? Next on the podcast. Let's do this.
Welcome to the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, a podcast about a journey of discovery and conversations about not sitting on the sideline of life. Let's get involved. Here's host Joe Foley.
Welcome back to the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast. I'm your host, Joe Foley. Today I'm going to talk with Joe Wheeler, the author of Dad Bod's Focus on You so you are there for them. Joe's a dad, but what really stood out to me is he's not talking about father from a perfect stage, but he's talking about from real life. Busy schedules, pressure to provide. Those moments you're doing everything for your family, but still feel something's missing. We talk about dads lost when they stop paying attention to themselves. Talk about mental health, how that's really important too. We talk about presence, being there, actually being there and put your phone down. We talk about dad guilt and what it carries. We get into the hard truth about taking care of ourselves, and it's not selfish. It may be one of the most responsible things you can do because your kids do not just need you busy, they need you presence. So let me get my conversation with Joe Wheeler. Welcome to the podcast, Joe.
Thank you so much, Joe. Pleasure to be here and pleasure to sit here and chat with you, especially about these topics. I know you're a dad yourself, so looking forward to talk about it.
How do you go from a technology attorney to writing a book about Dad Bod?
You know, that's a great question. And thanks for asking it. I think to me, it seemed like more of a natural transition than you might think, because I feel like I'm writing and reading all the time in my profession and kind of putting those ideas out there for myself was the new novel piece. You know, I'm always out there reviewing contracts and interpreting things and analyzing laws and doing this, but I'm doing it for clients and businesses and other people. And I thought, gosh, what if I was that introspective and retrospective on my own personal life? And I started journaling about it, writing about it, and it just kind of seemed like it was kind of a natural flow, and Dad Bod came out. So
I just I just like that. I always see that the dad bod on the social media and stuff, like how what a dad looks like. But
yeah.
one of the things, what about your book? And I was curious about, fatherhood, masculinity, mental health. What is that about and what it means to you?
You know, I think it's all about balance, right? It's about finding what works for you, what works for your family, what works, and then what doesn't work. And I think it's kind of a double-edged sword about figuring both those things out as you kind of live your life, raising your kids and living your life, sharing it with someone else. I think for myself, it was all about finding that balance. Put my head down and just work, 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 work. I felt like I was missing something on the personal side when I wasn't out there kind of doing the work and providing and fulfilling that kind of part of me. I felt like I was failing on that side. So it's really finding that balance of what you have to do the have to so that you can do the want tos. And it's been a journey for sure, as you know, as probably all dads know, it's a journey, and that's what makes it fun.
You're also a sports coach for your kids too, like, raising three kids. When you realize doing all that wasn't the same as being present for them, because I like doing all these things with my son, but sometimes I don't feel like I'm there. What was it something like that for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. You're right. Sometimes you're just going through the paces, right? You're going through the motions. You're just kind of pressing play and seeing what happens next without being in the driver's seat. You're just kind of having that stuff done to you, and you're just kind of ebb and flowing. I think taking stock and inventory on being present, right? Being in that moment. Sometimes that's hard to do. It's hard to take a beat and just kind of stop and take a breath. For me, and over the past few years, that's been kind of the bulwark of what I think is being a decent dad, I guess, is kind of being present, being in the moment, meeting your kids where they're at. They just want somebody to sit there and play Lego with them and just hang out and maybe listen to what happened at the school that day. They don't carry all that baggage that we carry, and sometimes it's refreshing to just be in their world instead of putting them in your world.
Well, interesting question about ask him how this day was school and stuff like that. My son goes, I go, how was your day at school? Good. I said, what happened? Nothing bad happened. All right, tell me one good thing happened. Nothing bad happened.
Yep, yep. I think we've all been there, Joe. I think we've all been there. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but what's been your experience like trying to talk to your kids and try to
yeah.
meet them where they are?
I think you nailed it. I think asking that second question and asking that third question and asking that fourth question, like you just described, is probably more engaging and interesting on your child's side than we might think.
Hmm.
And, there might be some kind of nugget in there where maybe he didn't answer you then, but maybe an hour from now, he's going to walk up and say, by the way, I forgot to mention this is what happened on the playground that day. Maybe it just at that moment it wasn't ready, but you kind of set the scene, right? You set the stage to where it's an environment where, hey, we can have this talk. We can have this open conversation. Sometimes asking 10 questions to get one word answers might open the door for a better answer down the road.
Well, I definitely had that experience because after like the 100th time of not having a bad day, he's like, Dad, something interesting happened at school today. I'm like, whoa, we're going to talk about something besides not a bad day. And then, like,
Yeah, but it's interesting because you have to wonder, well, there was a point where there was comfortableness enough where it was open, you could do that, and there was that moment, it was like, "Oh, I gotta share this with my dad, he might be genuinely interested, he might be engaged, he asks me all the time, and all I say is, 'Good, I have something to say today.'" That's an exciting moment for everybody.
no, this is definitely interesting too. And you have three kids, so you have three different experiences. I only have one. So
Okay.
you get the variety.
I do. I get the catch-all, and boys and girls, got the whole enchilada at my house, no doubt about it, yeah. There's some differences too. I have 2 older daughters, and my youngest is a boy,
Hmm.
my son, and there's definitely a difference between girl dad and boy dad, and there's differences about something I might say or do with my girls versus what I might say and do with my son, and it's not by design, and sometimes I think, "Oh, man, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I'm feeding into these kind of stereotypical things. Maybe I'm playing into all this societal stuff." But then it's also, again, meeting them where they're at as well. My daughter has no desire to talk about snakes and lizards and bugs and this, and my son loves that stuff. Absolutely loves it. So it's like, that same token of you got to meet them where they're at and kind of get into what they're into and be able to talk to them what they want to talk about. And so yeah, it's been a wild ride for sure. Yeah.
Well, definitely talk about, the identity. Like when you first became a dad from being a single person or just get married, what was that experience for you?
Yeah, that's the most interesting thing that I found writing my book is it took me a long time to realize this because now I think we're so far out of it, but when I became a dad, it almost felt eerily similar to like becoming a man or
Hmm.
becoming transitioning from a boy to manhood or adulthood or going through adolescence and puberty and all these things of, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to act? What am I supposed to say? Every single thing I do might have an effect on somebody else. Kind of all these interesting self-esteem issues and kind of self-image issues and all this stuff of like, oh my gosh, like what I say and do is going to affect another person. I don't want to screw it up. I got to get this right. And a lot of reflection just recently kind of came out for me personally, where it was like, wow, a lot of what you go through in adolescence and puberty is really interesting compared to when you transition from a man to a father. And I don't know, I have a lot to still flesh out with this and kind of process it and think through it and stuff, but I just think there's some really interesting synergy there that happens with expectations and society and demands and pressure and kind of all these things that dads are usually grounded in and supposed to do when you become a dad. And a lot of that can swallow up a lot of guys and can swallow up a lot of people. And I think, having a good support system and being able to understand yourself and maybe understand others a little bit might help you get through some of that stuff.
Well, it's definitely interesting. When my son was born, my son's mother was pregnant and we, in induced labor and stuff. I'm like, it looks like it's possibly going to happen until like they go, here you go. You're like, what am I doing with this big ball of clay? Then it seemed real.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And and it happens like that, doesn't it, Joe? It's like an
Mhm,
instant from one day to the next. All of a sudden, it's like another human is there that wasn't there a day ago. You're like, "Oh my gosh." I don't know. Yeah, it sounds like what happened to you happened to me and probably lots of other dads. It's like, "Wow, this is happening. This is like real now."
mhm.
And when you hold that baby in your arms, there's nothing greater, more special than that. And yeah, I think all of us can decide at that moment kind of what dad are we going to be. And sometimes it takes a long time for some of us to get there, and sometimes people are just amazing at it. I mean, I've seen dads who I look up to. I was like, gosh, you just knew from day one what you were doing. That's incredible. And sometimes I think, wow, maybe I'm doing the right thing, and sometimes I think, oh man, I way missed the mark on that one. What the heck's going on? So and again, that's all part of the journey. I think that's all part of the dadhood journey.
Well, definitely too. What kind of like role models did you have? Did you have parents or dads? Your dad give you an example, or what kind of role models did you have?
Yeah, of course I have dad. I still have a good relationship with my father. I had uncles and coaches and lots of kind of male figures in my life who I would look up to and would think, "Oh yeah, that's cool. I want to be like that." And I think when you're in it, some of that stuff kind of gets lost and forgotten, except for in the ways that you don't even realize how. And I know I'm talking kind of nuanced here, but the truth is, I think that we're influenced by people in ways we don't even realize. I look back and think, oh yeah, that's really interesting how, that one coach kind of really influenced me to teach me to like, persevere, and it's all about character, and there's some, you really have to kind of work towards your goals and to strive for something bigger and think about others outside of yourself. It's like, wow, that there's a lot of interesting things in here that I've taken over the years and have tried to kind of push into my own life without even realizing it. So, yeah, it's amazing when you think about that stuff.
Well, it's also too is I come from a different situation. I didn't have my dad growing up, so I don't really have a, like I would say role model in the sense of a father. But I have other men in my life too, like my old boss. I've had other fathers I looked up to, like wow, man, I want to be just like him and stuff like that. But I also too, like I remember when my like before my son was born, they give you all these books. You got to read this website. You got to do this, and I'm like, once you get they go, here's your baby. You leave the hospital. You're like, you're on your own. You got to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, and no doubt about it. Yeah, I know all the books you're talking about. I went to the classes and like, oh, you got to read this, you got to do this, you got to understand this, and it's very different from reading a book than looking down at a baby and saying, "What do I do now?" I mean, there's a huge learning curve there that you just sometimes you got to figure it out. And I think those of us that were down in the trenches, it for whatever, it makes for a fun and interesting experience, right? I know there's dads out there that aren't necessarily in the trenches or could be in the trenches or couldn't do that from day one, but it's definitely an experience, right?
Well, definitely too, and I think about that for a second in the sense that you know, we all had those dad moments. I've had plenty of those dad moments. And I feel so guilty about things I did that he will never remember, but he'll think about it. Like I tell him all the time, that happened. Yeah, it did. I can remember one time I was changing on the we had, like, a beer all the time, and he was changing his diaper. He was just probably, like, maybe not close to 1, and I had held him in one arm, and I just let go for a split second to grab the baby powder.
Yeah.
As I turned around, he was rolling off top of it, and I grabbed him by both legs before he hit the ground.
Woo.
And, like, those, like my quick reflexes, I'm like, boom, grab them. I'm like, "Holy crap. I coulda killed the kid." Had those moments. Or
Yeah. Yeah.
one time, I had a watch on, a heavy watch, and I
Yeah.
wasn't paying attention. I was talking to his mother, and my hand just happened to go like this, and he walked right into him. I cut his lip. I
Oh,
felt like the worst dad in the world, but in those the dad moments, you're like, "I didn't mean to do that."
exactly. Yeah. Like, I didn't do it. Oh my gosh. I have a couple too, Joe. It's just, yeah. There was one time we were out, my playing in the snow. My daughter was probably 1 or 2 years old and she was way over there. And like a dad, I'm like, oh, let's do a snowball fight. I grab a little snowball. I throw it up in the air. I think, oh yeah, no problem. Just trying to play a little bit. Boom, right in the face. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Things like that. I have a changing table story similar to yours as well. Crisis averted. I mean, there was one time where we were traveling and um I set my daughter down on the train and kind of went up to do the luggage and I looked and she had fallen down off the train seat and landed. There's moments like that where it's like I didn't know what else to do in that moment, but it's like here we are, and obviously that wasn't the right thing, but it's one of those dad moments where it's like it is what it is. So
Exactly, exactly. We all have them. I'm glad he
yeah,
doesn't remember that. So,
I know. Yeah, that's the best part, right? Yeah, my daughter doesn't remember any of that stuff. It's funny. It's funny.
well, one thing I was interested about in your book, and it's something now about men and stuff like that, but I'm kind of curious. I'm not sure what it means. It's like the middle age trope, TROP trope. What does that mean?
I wrote that section to kind of call out kind of the midlife crisis in a way. Kind of the idea that around a certain age of a man's life, they might want to step out on their wives, might want to forget about the kids a little bit, might want to really double down on taking a ton of supplements and getting ripped at the gym and kind of focusing a lot on themselves in a very kind of superficial, stereotypical way. And I said it's a trope because that's what it is. It's just kind of a very stereotypical way to think about it. Not saying that it's anyone that I know or am aware of. It's just kind of calling out that, hey, society says that this is what happens in middle age.
Uh-huh.
And, I thought a lot about that and I thought, yeah, maybe there's some truth to that. And when you start looking at divorce rates and you start looking at, the leading causes of why families separate and why couples break up and kind of what happens and at what ages and this, like, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. And I kind of emphasized in my book, it's sometimes it's not about you. And it's not about going to do all those things to make you feel better, if you really want to feel better, then let's make sure that it's in furtherance of making everybody feel good. And that's kind of what I was trying to call out. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for bringing it up, though. It's an interesting part of the book.
Well, and they're definitely interesting too. And I think that sometimes I don't think it's selfish to work on yourself too, because if you
Yeah,
work on
exactly.
yourself, working yourself, it makes a better you.
Exactly.
Because we get wrapped, I mean, as a dad myself, sometimes we get wrapped in the day to day stuff, and then one thing to the next. So you sit and watch practice. Next, you go home. It's 8:30. Like I had no time for myself and stuff like
Exactly.
that. But it's important. I'm wondering if it's important to work on yourself and your creativity, go to the gym and stuff like that. Do you think it's being selfish?
No, no, yeah, and thanks for bringing that up. And no, I don't. And there's a lot of the book that talks about this, how important it is to kind of take care of yourself so that you're the best that you can be for others. And so no, I really don't think there's anything selfish about that. I think where it gets to be kind of that trope and that stereotypical part is when you do it and you sacrifice everything else for it. And I think that's that balance part that I was kind of talking about is like, I absolutely have to have that self-care and that mental health and that physical health part that makes you feel good so that you're there for everybody else. But I think when it takes over you and that's all you think about and that's all it is at the sacrifice of everyone else, I think that's where it could potentially be a problem. Does that make
Well,
sense?
it does make sense, actually. Another thing you kind of transitioned to what I was going to talk about next is mental health. As a man, we have a hard time reaching out for help, but it's important to get help. What is your thoughts on that?
I agree with you 100%. I think men stereotypically push through, put your head down. You can work through it. You can fight through it. You can figure it out. And sometimes that might not be enough. But I think there's also a part of vulnerability that's required. Putting yourself out there and putting yourself out there to say, "Hey, maybe I'm not okay here. Maybe I do need a little help." And I think that's where men generally just have a little bit of a tougher time to acknowledge that and to say that. Self personally, I'm all for it. I'm all for taking those mental breaks, whatever they may be, or mental health, or sitting down with somebody, or talking to a therapist, or a psychologist, or psychiatrist, or whatever else that you might need. And if that's not as far as you need to go, then going to the gym for half an hour, going to play basketball or softball or getting outside or going for a walk around the neighborhood or sitting in your car for half an hour before you go in just to debrief and taking a breath and saying, okay, I'm done with work. I need to compartmentalize that. I'm about to go inside. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if the kid's going to come jump on me. I don't know if I'm going to have to go do 25 dishes right now, but whatever it is, it's all good. And yeah, I think that men can do a better job of kind of doing that inventory.
Well, and definitely too, and I think sometimes we forget, we get caught up in the things, and as you're talking, I think of the word. People ask, "How you doing?" "I'm fine." "How's it going?" "I'm fine." But we're really not fine inside. I think sometimes we need to reach out for help.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, usually I'm fine is kind of code word for I'm not
Just not
fine. I need help, And not to say that I'm fine means just that you're fine as well, but fine is so loaded, right? It's like, oh my gosh, why are you just fine? Why aren't you good? Or if something's bad, talk to me. Fine again is one of those covers to say, yeah, I'm struggling. I need some help. And being available to yourself and others to kind of acknowledge that is really important. No doubt about it.
well, I know there's a difference between men and women and stuff like that,
Yeah.
moms and dads, how we interact and how we deal with the problems. What did you think the difference between a mom and the dad's point of view?
That's interesting. I think like everything else, right? Like stereotypically, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, right? It's one of those things where women just have an higher emotional EQ of being able to open themselves up and put those guards down and be able to discuss things more openly. I think men naturally have a tendency to grunt it off and say, "Yeah, we're fine." Or if two men are sitting together, they probably have a very different conversation than two women sitting together, right? Even though they might talk about a very similar subject about, let's just say, their kids. Well, it might, sometimes on the men with men, you might think, well, it's a very superficial thing. Nobody's really talking about anything that might have some emotional substance to it. Whereas I think two women might. And again, that's just kind of a stereotypical read on a very natural situation that just exists. One thing I personally have tried to at least grow on is that if I am sitting down with guys or guy friends to kind of ask a second question like you do with your kids, ask a third question and maybe drill down and say, "Yeah, well, how does that make you feel?" Or like, "What's really going on there?" And it's interesting. It's perceived over the years as like, "Whoa, okay." And sometimes it's a little bit more of a guard up, or sometimes it's more like a breath, like, "Whoa, maybe we're gonna have an actual conversation." So it's really interesting to kind of break down some of those barriers.
Yeah, it's always interesting. If you get 3 women and their husbands in the same room and put the husbands over here, they and the women over here, they'll chat away, and the guy's like, "How's your day? How things go, man?"
Yeah,
"Fine."
yeah, good, good.
And if you start talking and open up, they kinda look at you like you're kinda strange.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah, and, I mean, what is that, Joe? What's that about? Like, it's just what do we do about it? I don't know,
To try to be more open, I guess, and stuff like
I
that. But
guess, yeah. Yeah.
One thing that was also an interesting was the mantra method in your book. What is that
Yeah.
about?
That's about just a positive affirmation of kind of solidifying some of the ideas that I try to write about. Every chapter I write about, I kind of open it up with a personal story, kind of similar to things that happened over the years, kind of how it reflected on myself and others. And then I talk about kind of the real aspect of it, about how it is today with being a dad and handling it. And then I transition to, what can we do going forward to kind of correct or help or kind of sustain this consistency. And that's where the mantra came from. Just one word phrases to really kind of help solidify an idea to maybe get you over the hump or just get you thinking about something a little bit differently. Just kind of opening your mind up to some new ideas. That was the whole idea behind it. Yeah.
Another thing too, like and you mentioned in the book, is health as responsibility. Your book is called Dad Bod.
Yeah.
Remember? We see that
Yeah.
we talked in the beginning, the dad bod. It
Yeah.
was all
Yeah.
trendy for a while.
Yeah.
But you talk about health and responsibility also in your book?
I do, because I think it's kind of tied hand in hand, and I talk about the real responsibility of that some of that might mean, that the dad bod over the years has crept up, and you might be carrying extra pounds. That extra pounds put extra weight on your heart. It might raise your blood pressure. It might make you more difficult for you to spend time with your kids and be outside and do all these other things. And just kind of taking that control back and taking back that agency of feeling like not only can I control my mental health, but I can control my physical health as well, as much or as little as I want to. And taking back that agency had a lot to do for myself personally, and I think it helped shape some of this stuff that came out about being able to look back at some of my adolescent years and some of my formative high school years and looking back at other men that might have influenced me throughout the years. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't address the mental aspect and the physical aspect all at the same time. And I think it is a huge piece of the puzzle. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Can you describe some of the challenges you faced?
Yeah, that like everyone else, it's finding the time and the consistency to do it amongst schedules and amongst schedules of balancing a family of 5 and balancing a full-time work schedule. I think the challenges for me that I face as a dad is it's really hard to eat really good, healthy food when you have little kids around. It's a hard balance and it's a hard life to do that all the time, is to, like, eat a very structured way and eat a very structured meal when you're raising 3 little kids that kind of wanna eat similar things all the time and the same things and kind of all processed fun food, and it's always around and it's all here and it's the stuff that I've been around my entire life. Like, yeah, it's right here. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is really being able to set some of that aside and say, you know, I need to do what I need to do to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, but also taking care of my kids at the same time. I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges. Yeah.
Well, definitely too. I mean, my son, I'm like, dude, you can't eat chicken nuggets and pizza every night for dinner. I mean,
Exactly.
you gotta try
Exactly.
something. We gotta expand your
We got to
palate.
expand your horizon here to some other
Plenty,
foods. Yeah,
there's
exactly.
plenty of really good foods and better foods than besides chicken nuggets and pizza and mac and
Exactly.
cheese.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
You met something I was also interested in is, some strategies you could use to help dad get focused, kind of like zone in on what needs to be done.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for myself personally, it was really taking stock and taking inventory. And some kind of tools and nuggets on that is just sitting with yourself for 5 minutes with no distractions and kind of imagining where you want to be in a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years, or 4 or 5, whatever number that is comfortable for you, to just say, okay, pause on everything, and where do I see myself in a year? What am I doing? What kind of relationships do I have with my kids? What kind of relationship do I have with my wife? What am I in the same job? What am I, how am I spending my time? What are my hobbies? And really taking stock and inventory of kind of what's working and maybe what isn't. That a little bit of that goes a long way. It's 5 minutes, but it might help structure what you might want to do with the next year.
what I was thinking about when you're talking, and I know maybe you've
Yeah.
done this as a dad, 'cause I've done this plenty of times.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm 50, Sean's 13, I got about, alright, Tommy's this, and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out how when he's 30, I'll be 70, you know what I mean? So I try to think
Yeah.
about that
Yeah.
stuff all the time as a dad, 'cause I wanna be around, I wanna be able to do things with him and stuff like that, but I always count when you're
Exactly.
saying that, I was thinking about time and, how it passes and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Because we get so caught up in everything too.
It's so funny. Yeah.
And a dad, there's like I like the whole 5-minute thing. Take a minute, breathe, focus, come in the house,
Yeah.
because I know as men, I feel as we're task orientated. We're like task one, task two, task three, get it done. And my son's like, Dad, no, you need to finish. We go on the next task. So we need to finish and get up. And kids, they have their own agenda sometimes.
What do you mean sometimes? All the time. They have their own agenda on exactly how they see their day going. Sometimes it aligns with you, and most of the time it does not. I mean, that 100%.
Well, also I think kids see dad as the fun guy, the guy who will wrestle with them, throw him around, get him in the headlock, give him a noogie, and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely some of that going on in my house, as well. I try to find the balance too, because I think sometimes we can kind of fall into those roles, right? And I don't want my wife to feel like she always has to be the taskmaster and I'm just the fun guy. And on the flip side, I don't want my wife to just be there to always just have fun with the kids and that, and I have to be the taskmaster. So I mean, we try to kind of give and take, push and pull to kind of try to share that. But yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. No doubt about it.
May I ask how old your son is?
Yeah, my son is 6.
My son is 12 going on 13.
Yeah,
And some of the stuff he says to me and I interacts with me, like,
yeah.
did you say this stuff to your mother? No, because he's a guy. He's like, yeah, I'm like, he's a guy. He starts talking about, I
Yeah.
don't need to know about that. It's
Okay,
like,
good to know, good to know.
He's like, "Dad, I'm bigger than you." You may be a little bit bigger, but I'm older and wiser, and I have more experience."
I love it. I know. I think my son is counting the days till he can say, "I'm bigger than you." He already thinks about it now. He's trying to, like, compare his muscles, he's trying to show me in the mirror. I'm like, "Bud, you're 6 years old. Chill out. It's all good. Let's go play."
Well, it's like guys, we like to bust each other's chops. So
Exactly.
now he's like to bust dad's chops, and he thinks he can get away with it.
That's fine. Oh, that's good. That's gonna be
Well,
good.
definitely, one thing I was, like, curious about is about, when you wrote the book and stuff like that, what was it like life looked like on the other side when the dad actually starts to take care of himself, when the changes happen, when it first happens? What do you think happens once the dad takes care of themselves
Yeah.
and works
Yeah.
through all the stuff?
Yeah. That's an awesome question, Joe. And I think what I've experienced recently, and it's been a somewhat special time, is that everybody seems to be thriving and everybody seems to be happy. I know it's not going to last, and I know there's going to be ups and downs, and I know there's always moments and there's give and take to everything. But at least now it seems like my kids have a sense of comfort and joy that comes out because I think they can see that myself and my wife are all in a good place. And it's a special moment. So a lot of kind of looking back and saying, "Wow, that's pretty cool," is kind of realizing that there's an environment now where everybody's thriving, and that's a good moment.
It's a journey 'cause it goes
Exactly.
by so quick. Yep.
It's wild, right? Yeah. What's the saying? The days go slow, but the years go fast. And man, it's so true. So
Out in a blink of an eye.
oh, it's wild, isn't it?
Dad, but what is one thing dad could do this week, just one, that would make a real difference at home?
You know, get down in the trenches with your kiddos,
Mhm.
get down on your hands and knees and meet them where they're at. And if that means, sitting down on the floor or laying down next to them and kind of meeting them at their level.
The moments matter. That really
Exactly.
do. The time
Exactly.
matters. They'll remember how you made them feel,
Exactly right.
but they wanna get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe. Yeah, you can find us online and all the socials at yourdadbod.com. And our hardcover comes out May 5th. I'm not sure when this is going to be aired, but book's available now. So thanks so
Well,
much.
Joe, thank you much for being on the podcast, and I really do appreciate it. All links will be in the show notes for this episode. Thank you for your time, sir. It's a
Thank you
fun
so much, Joe.
conversation.
It's been great. Thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. Thanks for having me on.
That was my conversation with Joe Wheeler. The thing that sticks with me is simple. The moments matter. It's not the perfect moments, because sometimes they're not perfect, but sometimes they're just simple. Not the polished ones, not the ones that look good from the outside, the real ones. Sitting on the floor, asking the second question, playing Legos. Listen when your kids finally decide to talk. Show up after a long day even though you're tired. Joe says something important in this conversation. Sometimes kids just want us to meet them where they are. It sounds simple, really does. But it's not always easy, because as a dad, we get stuck in the task mode. Do this, fix that, get home, make dinner, go through bedtime, start again tomorrow. And if we're not careful, life becomes like a long checklist. That's not presence. That's survival. A lot of dads are living that way. So here's a challenge for this week. Get down in the trenches with your kids. Give them 20 minutes where you are not half there. No phone, no rushing, no trying to make it perfect. Just be there for them. Play, listen, ask one more question. Let them lead for a while, because one day that practice ends. The toys get packed away. The conversation changes. You're not getting the exact season back. If this episode made you think of dads who need to hear this, share that with them. Check out Joe Wheeler's book, Dad Bod Focus, on you, so you are there for them. All links I'll have in the show notes. And again, thank you for listening. And always remember, take care. God bless. See ya.